Good morning. I'm so excited to join you here today. Thank you to the She League Conference for this awesome opportunity, and I'm hoping that you are enjoying your time immensely so far this morning. Today is really all about empowering you to lead, to excel, and to inspire like never before. And I really want to challenge you to do those things and take your game to the next level because we're counting on you to continue to lead the way. In order to go to the next level, though, we've got to address this thing that we're calling the imposter syndrome. In order for us to really be our best, we have to learn how to overcome so that we can lead, excel, and aspire to our fullest potential. Now, I do have a disclaimer for today, though. So just because we're doing this presentation today does not mean that when we're done, that your imposter syndrome is going to be all gone and taken care of. But I will promise you that if you put into practice the things that I'm going to share with you, that I think you will find it will continue to drive you forward and keep you from maybe treading in neutral and in some extreme circumstances going in reverse. So I can't see you because we're in this social distancing situation, but I hope you're ready to engage with me, that you've got your pen and your paper or your device near you, and you can take some copious notes. And I want to challenge you to ACT today. And ACT is an acronym that I want you to keep in mind throughout my presentation. I want you to think about one thing that you're going to take an action on today, hopefully throughout all the presentations that you hear throughout the day. 2, I want you to think about one thing you might need to change in order to move forward and conquer this imposter syndrome. And then lastly, what's one thing you can teach someone else that might help them on their journey to overcoming imposter syndrome? So if you guys are ready, and I hope you are, let's jump in. Let me make sure. So first of all, when I was asked to talk about this topic, I thought it was important for us to have a clear definition of what we're talking about when we talk about imposter syndrome. And to my surprise, this terminology has been around for a long time, probably before some of you were even born. So it was developed by 2 psychologists back in 1978, if you can believe that. And it's defined as a psychological pattern in which high-achieving individuals doubt their skills, their talents, and accomplishments, and have a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. That was a mouthful, right? And maybe you have not heard that terminology before, but I thought it was important that we start there. I also did some additional research. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. Is that imposter syndrome affects everybody. In fact, the latest research says that it impacts millennials. Out of every 1 in 3 millennial experiences imposter syndrome. Now, this next statistic really shocked me, that said over 70% of people overall will experience at least one episode of imposter syndrome in their lifetime. And then lastly, and this one probably hits really home to each and every one of us, 58% of African American women report being highly guarded in the workplace. How many of you could relate to being highly guarded in the workplace? I know I could, and I do many times. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Many times we're in cultures that we're the only ones, right? How many of you guys have been in the only one in the room, either the only female or the only African American? And it's not necessarily this welcoming culture for you, right? And I don't know about you, but I also grew up with my parents telling me, you know what? You have to be twice as good if you're going to compete. So these messages that we've heard throughout our life, combined with the cultures we find ourselves in, quickly put us into this imposter syndrome scenario. I don't know about you, but I didn't know, as I continued to do some research, whether or not there were 5 different types of imposter syndromes. Did you know that? I just thought there was just this imposter syndrome. So I'm going to go through these 5, and I'm sure you're going to be able to identify yourself in one of these. So the first one is called the perfectionist. I'm sure you've met some perfectionists. And these are people that need to be 100% perfect 100% of the time. They tend to be micromanagers, and they tend to have a very difficult time delegating. Now, I'm sure some of you could identify with the perfectionist. Then there's the superhero. These are your workaholics. They feel that if you work harder, you work longer, that that's what it's going to take to measure up to the standards in the workplace. The next one is the expert, and you've probably met a few of them as well. They base their whole value on how much they know and how many different things they can do. You might be able to relate to the expert. Next is the natural genius. They're focused on getting things done the first time. So it's all about how quickly they learn new things, how quickly they get things done. But when they reach a point where they can't learn things quickly and it doesn't come easy to them, they quickly revert back to questioning their intelligence. They begin to think they're not so smart after all and start to withdraw. You might be able to relate to the natural genius. And then lastly, there's this soloist. This is the person that views asking for help as a weakness. So no matter how difficult their journey might be, they're going to keep forging ahead all by themselves, no matter how challenging it gets. Now, I have a confession to make. I'm not sure which ones you identified with, but I've identified throughout my 26-year career, and now as an entrepreneur even, some of these pop up, at least 4 out of 5 of these. So we've dispelled the myth that you're only going to experience one of these. I've experienced 4 out of the 5 of these throughout my career. So I want you to take a second, and you got a community online, talk to each other, drop in the chat, which one do you identify with, or maybe you identify with a few of them, and it's okay. Because remember, you're not by yourselves. Over 70% or more experience this throughout their lifetime. So I can remember the first time I've encountered this thing called imposter syndrome. I can remember being this young, energetic, right out of college, ready to conquer the world, stepping into my first corporate career. And in meeting that with great enthusiasm, I'm looking forward to getting promoted. I'm looking forward to doing a great job. And then you're faced with that day that you walk in, you're smiling, you're looking for everybody to welcome you, and it's almost as if you're invisible when you walk in the room. If that wasn't bad enough, when you sit down at the table to engage in the meeting and you choose to engage, once again, it feels like you're invisible. You start to say, well, am I mute? Are they having a hard time hearing? It's like they totally disregarded what I just said. And then what really puts the icing on the cake is when your colleague next door to you, sitting next to you, says the exact same thing. And everybody celebrates and like, this is the best idea since sliced bread. Anybody else can relate to that situation? And then all of a sudden you sit there in your chair and you're kind of like, oh my goodness, what have I just walked into? Do I even deserve to be in the room? Am I smart enough? How will I work and navigate this culture going forward? Maybe I shouldn't be here at this organization. And that self-doubt, that negative self-talk, all the things start to surface on whether or not you're going to continue to show up. So you might be able to relate to that. I've always had the philosophy, and I will tell you when that experience there continued to happen. So every time I got promoted, those things happened over and over again. And so I share that with you because you might have read my bio, some of you might know me, and you might think, oh, she never dealt with imposter syndrome. And that is furthest from the truth. But what I will tell you is you experience it and you move forward anyway. So my philosophy has always been, it's not so much what happens to you, because things are going to happen to all of us. It's about what you choose to do, how you choose to respond, and how you're going to decide to show up anyway. So what I want to share with you today are 2 strategies that I've personally used, and it's helped me tremendously overcome the imposter syndrome and continue to advance my career and do the things that I wanted to do. And the first one is going to be around mindset. We're going to talk about the paradigm shifts that we need to make in order to overcome imposter syndrome. And the second area is going to really be around how do we empower ourselves? How do we stop giving our power away to other people and take charge of ourselves? And so those are the 2 areas that we're going to talk about. So let's start with the paradigm shift. So the first shift I want to challenge you to make is on focusing on the controllables versus the uncontrollables. Oftentimes we spend so much energy on things at the end of the day we just cannot change. I can remember being so focused on how other people were treating me, But at the end of the day, I can't control how they treat me. I can only control how I choose to respond. The second one is focusing on being the best version of yourself and stop the comparison game. We're really good as women doing the comparison game. Would you agree? And the best thing we can do is compete with ourselves, continue to get better each and every day so that we can achieve the goals that we've set out. Because oftentimes we're comparing what we're weak at with something that somebody's very strong at. And that's a very unfair comparison and will always leave you feeling short-sighted. Next, I want us to learn to discern fact from opinion. So many times we internalize the opinions of others and sometimes our own negative self-talk. And at the end of the day, it's truly not true. So I want you to ask yourself, fact or opinion? And what examples do I have to support that fact? And lastly, I want to challenge us that quitting is not an option. We deserve to persevere and achieve all that we've set out to achieve in our careers and in our lives overall. And we can do that. And secondly, I would tell you what kept me going a lot of times was the fact that I wanted to set an example. I wanted to give hope to those coming behind me that they too can achieve their dreams. So you can't quit because people are watching you and counting on you. So having the right mindset is a key strategy to overcoming the imposter syndrome. So I want you to take a second, make a note, chat in the chat about which one of those mindsets, which one of those paradigm shifts do you need to make to help you overcome your specific imposter syndrome. The second strategy is all around empowering yourself. Now, I won't have time to unpack it all, but I do want to quickly talk through these. And again, these are things that I found have been tremendously helpful. So the first one is around priorities. And I think it's really important that you take some time and really think about what is it that I'm trying to accomplish in the big scheme of things. Number one, starting with just life in general. What are my priorities? Secondly, am I in a career, am I in a company, am I in a culture that supports those priorities at the end of the day? Because what I can tell you, the worst place to be is if your life priorities and your work priorities are not in sync. And that is a huge contributor to the stress that we feel and the imposter syndromes that we find ourselves in. And then secondly, what are those priorities on the job? Get crystal clear. Because right now, given all the change that's going on, there's a lot of things coming at us very quickly. And your ability to get clarity on what's important at any given time is a key gateway to you overcoming your imposter syndrome. The second thing is all around preparation. So we talked a minute ago about the definition that you're high achieving. You've done tremendous things throughout your career, but for some reason you still have this self-doubt. I think one of the things to really be clear on is what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses and opportunities? And when you know those for a fact for yourself, then you can take control of your development plan and not leave it to someone else and continue your learning journey. Never, ever stop learning. And that also helps you overcome this imposter syndrome. Number three is people. The biggest mistake I see specifically women of color making is that we've been told, keep your heads down, work hard, and you'll be recognized for all the hard work that you're doing. And that was partially correct, but there's another huge component to this, and that's building an internal and an external network and building key relationships. And if there's one relationship that I find in my coaching experience that's always strained or not developed is the relationship with your boss. It's one of the most important relationships that you have to develop, whether you like them or not. So if you don't have a good working relationship with your boss right now, I implore you right now, go fix it immediately. And I think you will find it's another key avenue to overcoming your imposter syndrome. The next one is around process. At the end of the day, the true equalizer between any two individuals is time, right? Nobody gets an advantage on time. So your ability to manage your time effectively is key so that you can continue to work on the most important things versus the urgent things and make time to build those relationships while also driving results. And then, of course, it goes without saying that performance is a key indicator for overcoming the imposter syndrome. Make sure you clearly understand what's expected in the roles that you have. How will your performance be measured? And then make sure you deliver and exceed those results. Because the one thing I can tell you from experience, and many people in this room will tell you the same thing, is that in corporate America, results are the currency for influence. And then last but not least, I know many of you have high hopes and dreams for your careers. You have your eyes set on those next roles that you want to achieve. And you're waiting on those promotions. And so one of the key things that I have found is control your own PR. Don't leave your whole PR to someone else. So always be ready with your elevator pitch to tell people what you're working on, what the impact is, and then also map your own plan to increase exposure. Don't let your brand be confined to the department or the team that you're working in. Map a strategy that gets it out in the open, and don't rely on someone else. So again, which of these areas will you begin working on this week? Jot it in the chat, jot it down on your notepad, because again, we want to act. We want to take action today. So in summary, I just want to encourage you that you're not alone if you're experiencing imposter syndrome. Again, I too have experienced it, and even as an entrepreneur today, experience it from time to time. The question is, how will you choose to respond? How will you choose to show up anyway? So we've talked about the strategy of mindset. So what paradigm will you shift today to help you overcome imposter syndrome? We also talked about empowering yourself. Which of those 6 strategies will you employ this week to help you in overcoming imposter syndrome? So again, I've been through this. I understand exactly what you're going through. And because of that, I'm absolutely confident that if you implement these 2 strategies, you will lead, you will excel, and you will inspire more effectively, and you will achieve all the career goals that you've set for yourself. I hope you've accepted my challenge to act today. What one action will you take? What one change will you make? And what one thing will you teach someone else? And the last thing I just wanted to share with you guys quickly is I'm just excited to share with you that I'm launching my leadership book on October 27th, and I'm extremely excited. So whether you're an individual contributor or the CEO of your organization, whether you're early in your career or a seasoned veteran, this book is a great playbook to help you empower your leadership. So you can download a free chapter, you can pre-order the book, or you can connect with me for more information on coaching at heartbeatleadershipbook.com. Thank you so very much. Continue to enjoy the conference. And next, let's welcome Courtney Gibson and Terry McClure for a fireside chat on breaking through the glass ceiling. Thank you.